Yeah, I was there for a part of it, and Anne's a great teacher, so I'm not surprised. Okay, so I was just saying that as we wait another minute or two, if anyone else is going to sign on, I will be sharing with you things to look at through the Zoom and putting some links in the chat box as we go on. But you don't need anything. But if you do have a volume of Gemara of Masechet Psachim, you might as well get it, but it's not necessary at all. Okay.
What daf?
We're not really gonna be learning. We're gonna kind of be just like, today it's more about like holding the Gemara. What does it feel like? What are the parts of it? So we'll be kind of flipping around the whole thing. That's one thing that is unfortunate. I would like everyone to, if we were in person, everyone could hold a Gemara. I could pass it around. Part of it is that's part of the experience. But we'll do our best. Okay, so let's begin. Welcome to If You Never Learned Gemara, and I look forward to learning together. I think we're all going to learn a lot. And I hope this class learning together will be beneficial in that way, that we'll all walk away, however much Gemara we have learned, we'll walk away with a more clear, better understanding of it, and we'll be able to learn it better the next time we learn it ourselves or we're at a shiur. And the extra learning is a wonderful way to look forward to Shavuos as well. And also, again, all of these shiur and all these classes that we've been organizing, hopefully is also a way just for different people of the shul to have set times during the week that we'll see each other and spend time with friends, maybe meet new people. So hopefully we'll be successful in that regard as well. Okay, this series, we only have 4 classes, 4 sessions tonight, and then 3 more Thursday nights. The next Thursday night will be the first night of Shavuos, so that Thursday night is missed. So it means I have 4 classes, and we scheduled 45 minutes a class. That means I have 3 hours to summarize and introduce and make all of you experts in learning Gemara. So obviously that's not possible, but we're going to do our best to try to give everyone an introduction and framework. And my assumption is that everyone here, you've heard either from me or another shiur someone quote a Gemara, or you've read a short passage as part of a source sheet, but perhaps you never had a systematic introduction to learning Gemara. And sometimes even people who go through the yeshiva system never get that sort of organized, systematic introduction. And that's what we're going to be trying to do. So the class tonight is going to be more about history and background. We are going to open up a Gemara, so to speak, but we're not going to be learning a piece of Gemara so much per se. Then, this is my thinking now, then the next session, we'll learn together a bunch of short snippets of Gemara, but not one full, what we call sugyot, one full Talmudic discussion. So that way we'll be able to see the different kinds of questions and sort of see a little bit the variety of discussions that are found in the Gemara. And then the last 2 sessions will focus on one sugya and learn one full Talmudic sugya discussion well. Class number 3 focusing on the Gemara itself, and then class 4 focusing on some of the classic traditional commentaries on the Gemara. Because when we speak about, if you never learned Gemara, introduction to Gemara today, it can't just be an introduction to the text of the Talmud itself without, some appreciation, understanding of all that's developed since then, and the classical commentaries that are associated with the Gemara. So that is the plan. Okay, sound good? Feel free, we're going to begin. Feel free to ask questions. The first 10 minutes or so will be me more or less talking, but interrupt, ask questions to clarify or anything. And then after that, we'll be looking at some things inside. So the Gemara are the discussions based on the Mishnah. So even though we have our own, if you never learned Mishnah class, but I can't really give an introduction to the Gemara without some background to the Mishnah. What is the Mishnah? The Mishnah are the basic teachings of the Torah Shebaal Peh, of the oral law, that was edited and codified by Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi in approximately the year 200. It includes teachings from sages from the time of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash and until that year, so 150 years or so, 100 to 150 years. And these were the teachings of the oral law that were taught orally about the details of the mitzvos, rabbinic law, laws that the rabbis established. And it came to the point after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, it was a very difficult time in Jewish history. It was felt it needed to be codified, and a text was set, again, approximately the year 200. That doesn't mean that it was studied from books. It could be that it was still often just memorized and recited orally and studied orally, but there was a set text. Now, what is found in the Mishnah? So there are teachings about the entire Torah, every area of the Torah. It includes basic teachings to which everyone agrees, and it includes many disputes. It includes teachings that are both conceptual, general principles. We're going to be looking at Masechet Psachim, which is, amongst other things, discusses Pesach. So you'll find a Mishnah which say, this is the general rule. Any grain that could ferment such that you would violate the prohibition of owning and eating chametz, only such a grain can be used to make matzah. You'll find sort of general principles like that, even more conceptual Mishnayot. But the Mishnayot also included very practical, technical teachings. So, for example, there's a tractate, Masechet Klayim, forbidden mixtures. So you can't mix, let's say, different trees. So there's a question, at what point are two varieties of oranges considered different species such that you can't mix them? If they're basically variations of the same species, you could mix them. But once they're so distinct that they're considered different species, then you can't mix them. So there are mishnayot upon mishnayot of listing plants and trees and animals of what's considered the same species, what's considered a different species. At the time, those were important laws for people to know. So it includes technical halachos like that as well. There are 6 orders. That's how we translate it. 6 main parts of the Mishnah, 6 orders, 6 sidarim. You don't have to remember all of them, but remember there are 6, but they are Zra'im, laws, agricultural mitzvot that apply in Eretz Yisrael. Moed, all of the holidays, the annual cycle. Nashim, laws related to marriage, divorce, family laws. Nizikin, monetary laws, the laws of damages, torts, etc. Kadshim, all of the laws related to the Beis Hamikdash offering sacrifices. And Taharos, the laws of ritual purity and impurity. Okay, so that's the Mishnah codified around the year 200. The Gemara are the discussions that surround those Mishnayos. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi codified the key core teachings, distilling to the most important teachings in the most succinct writing of it. So, of course, these teachings, there are many teachings associated with the ones that made it into the Mishnah, and the Mishnah were discussed and debated, how to apply them, how to understand them. And these discussions took place in the great yeshivas. Right now, we'll focus on Babylonia, Iraq, the great yeshivas in Bavel at the time. And these teachings themselves sort of developed, and there were famous teachings and explanations of the Mishnah and discussions, debates about the Mishnah. And eventually that grew into the text that is the Gemara. It's traditionally, we associate the editing of the Gemara with 2 sages of the Gemara, Amoraim, that's what we call sages of the Gemara, Ravina and Ravashi, edited around the year 500 to 550 or so. But there was tinkering of editing after that, but that's typically the year they point to. What kinds of things did the Gemara discuss? So the Gemara, in discussing the Mishnah, will ask, what is the source of the Mishnah? What verse is this oral law based on? It will sometimes clarify the Mishnah. The Mishnah is ambiguous. What does the Mishnah mean? There may be a debate. The Gemara might sometimes quote other material that comes from the time of the Mishnah but wasn't included in the Mishnah. There may be other discussions which are connected to the general topic of the Mishnah, but maybe not, rooted specifically in that Mishnah. So the Gemara will discuss it as connected to that Mishnah. So the Gemara is all of these discussions. It is not a code, it's not a book of law. They are recordings of discussions. And so often there isn't a clear conclusion. There's a debate and the Gemara tries to prove which opinion is correct, but it can't really come to a clear proof. And so we're left with a debate. Or there's a question and the Gemara has multiple answers to the question. Well, which is the most correct answer? Which is the answer that we accept? It leaves it unclear. There are sometimes discussions, sometimes very important discussions, that appear multiple times in the Talmud. And why is that? Because it is an idea that is touched upon by multiple Mishnayot. So let's give one example. The Gemara asks a basic question, which is an example of it doesn't really come to a resolution, of whether or not mitzvot tzrichot kavana or not. In order to fulfill a mitzvah, must you understand you're doing a mitzvah and must you have intention that I'm doing this to fulfill the mitzvah? And without such basic intention, I don't fulfill it. Or no, as long as I do it, I do it. So let's say I happen to enjoy matzah. So you eat matzah on the night of the Seder. Is it necessary to have in mind that I'm doing this for the mitzvah? Or no, even if I don't have it in mind, if I did it, I did it. So that's a very basic question that applies to any mitzvah in the Torah. And so not surprisingly, there are a few Mishnayot in different Masechtot when talking about their Mishnah, which there's a teaching that may be relevant to resolving that question. So in each of those Mishnayot, in each of those Masechtot, the Gemara will raise the question, try to prove it from the local Mishnah, and then in the discussion we'll say, and what about that Mishnah from that Masechta? And we'll bring that Mishnah in and we'll have the discussion. But in that Masechta, it'll do the same thing. It'll start with that Mishnah and then bring in the opposite Mishnah if you're following me. And so there are certain sugyot, certain discussions, and often key discussions that take place in multiple places. And sometimes not everything is in each place. You have to kind of piece everything together. And if you're learning Masechet Psachim, there is such a sugya of whether you need kavana. To really learn the sugya, you're going to also have to learn a Gemara in Brachos, in Rosh Hashanah, wherever it may be. Sometimes it's a verbatim quote. There's just a whole chunk, a whole page, which verbatim appears in several places. And then there isn't really such a need to learn the Gemara. It's going to be the exact same words. Okay. It's important to note that the Talmud also includes non-halachic discussions, agadata that we call, explanations of verses, moral teachings, stories, parables. The Gemara really includes everything, theological discussions, but we are leaving all of that aside. That is not what our series is going to be about. We're going to be about the halachic sections of the Gemara. And I'm also teaching, if you never learned Midrash, that if you're interested in that, you should come to those classes or listen to the recordings. Let me pause here for a moment. Do any questions? I don't know if all of this is obvious to everyone or it's helpful just to hear it clearly or that there's a lot of new material. Any questions? Any reactions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you know when now you said that a sugya is really not a piece of text, but more of a topic. How are you supposed to know when there are things you need to look at in other parts of the Gemara? It's not hyperlinked.
That's an excellent question. That's an excellent question. So when we open up the Gemara, I'll be able to show you a little bit more clearly, but I'll just answer a little bit right now. So first of all, it is a little bit hyperlinked. Let me give you something to look at. So let's just do that right away. Let me put into the chat box a link. You're going to learn a lot of other stuff. So let me introduce you to an incredible website, HebrewBooks.com. Has anyone ever, or HebrewBooks.org, excuse me. Is anyone familiar with that? Okay. So HebrewBooks.org is a free website, and they have digitized any sefer that is legal to do so. Okay, meaning that it's not, excuse me, where's chat here? That there isn't like a copyright. So any sort of old classic sefer you can find on HebrewBooks.org. Did everyone see that? Everyone look in the chat box and go to that link if you don't mind. Hopefully that's working for everyone. Tell me if it's not. So this is sending you to a Psachim, a Gemara Psachim. If it's a little too zoomed in, if you go to sort of the bottom right of your screen, there'll be a plus and minus to zoom out. Do people have this? Sorry, I can't. I'm not. People see this? Is it working for people?
It's not working for us.
Do you have the link? Can you click on the link?
Not working.
Not working. Can you maybe copy and paste it into your browser? It seems like it's working for some and not others.
Working. I got it working, but I copied it and I.
Okay, so you might have to copy it and put it into your browser. I apologize if you have to do that. So this is a Psachim. This is I'm holding here. If you see, right, a standard Gemara. You're looking at that first page. So if you let's go to page. Let's go to page. Give a good example. We're a little bit
only one page.
Well, no. So, okay, Howie, you should know this from Mishnah Berurah. So on top, does everyone see
Okay, yeah.
the next, and we're on page 1 in the book. And if you go to, I'm just going to find a random page here
Slide it
You
over.
click on the little arrow and you get a list of numbers. You can pick whatever page you want.
This is a great example. We want to go to Zion. Go to page 15. Go to page 15, which is the page we're going to want. I was planning on looking at anyways later.
The 14 on the real book?
Yeah, but 15 in the Hebrew books pages.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Zion Amud Bet, right? The Gemara is ordered by pages, and there's the front and back side, Amud Aleph and Amud Bet. So Daf Zion, page 7, and Amud Bet, the second page. So if you, let me figure out how to explain this to you, where I'm going to look. But if you, does everyone see on the left outer column, like exactly halfway down the page, there are 5 lines there bunched up. L'kaiman kuf yotet amud bet, menachot lamed he amud bet, megillah chaf alf amud bet. Do people see that?
Yeah.
Go to page 15.
So page 15. So right in the middle of that page, the Gemara quotes a rule. And if you're not, don't worry if you don't find this inside. Amar Yehuda Mar Shmuel, Yehuda taught in the name of Shmuel, Kol ha-mitzvah mevarech len over lasiyasan. Any mitzvah, you recite the blessing before you perform the mitzvah. This is in the context of Bedikat Chametz. But that's a rule that will appear in many places. So that little star there's a star in the Gemara. I'm sorry if I'm doing this too quickly because it's all a little bit of a tangent to answer your question. That star goes to the left, all the way to the left of the page, and it tells you 5 other places in the Gemara, in Shas, in the Talmud, where this exact same rule and quote appears from Yehuda Mar Shmuel. So sometimes you do have that on the page itself once you know how to navigate the page, and that's part of what we're going to be doing is learning how to navigate the page of Gemara. But also often the most classic commentaries will, if it's relevant, often they will cite the relevant Gemaras, because very often that's what Tosfot will do. In discussing the Gemara in front of us, we'll say, well, wait a second, how does that fit with a Gemara over there? So, and then sometimes, you know, if in the beginning of your learning, you need a teacher. So there's in one way, and sometimes you can learn and miss it and not know there is a relevant Gemara. But those are some of the ways that you know that there are other relevant pieces of Gemara on this topic. Excellent question. How do we know it? These are exactly the kinds of questions I do want to discuss, like not just theoretically, but like how do you actually practically do it? Any other questions, reactions?
So, this star has a little bet next to it. Then two lines above it is an olive, a little olive. What are those for?
We're going to get to there. I don't want to get this. We're going to get there. I promise.
Okay.
Okay. Now, one axiom of the Gemara is the Gemara, the discussions of the Gemara, and of the sages of the Gemara, the Amoraim. So from 200 to 500, all those discussions. And often there are discussions in the Gemara that span literally hundreds of years, and not everyone knew each other, and there was an editing to it because, let's say, an early Gemara sage made a comment, made a ruling. Then someone of his generation or the next generation had a question against it. And then there's only an answer in the next generation, or in a third generation, there's a resolution of how we paskin. So often there are discussions that have been edited that, you know, not everyone actually spoke to one another, but it's presented in that way. So that's also a very interesting point. An axiom of the Gemara is that the Mishnah is authoritative, more or less. Let me explain what I mean. A Mishnah often will present two opinions. And often it will present one opinion as the majority opinion and another opinion as the minority opinion, which means in the days of the Mishnah, presumably the practice followed the majority opinion. And as a general rule, the Amoraim, the sages of the Gemara, will follow that same majority opinion. But sometimes there were sages of the Gemara, especially the greatest, who felt that no, that actually the minority opinion in the Mishnah is more correct. It made more sense to him. And that is allowed. A later generation is allowed to paskin like what was previously a minority opinion. And this still happens today in the development of halacha. Something that was a minority opinion in 100 years ago now is seen as the accepted opinion. So that was allowed. Sometimes you have a Mishnah which is recorded as a unanimous and anonymous. It's the same thing, meaning unnamed, because it's without dissent. A stam Mishnah, it's called. A unanimous Mishnah and also an anonymous Mishnah without presenting any disagreeing opinion. And then the Gemara will quote a ruling of an Amora, which is contradicted by the Mishnah. And they say, how could this Amora rule like this? The Mishnah says otherwise. The Mishnah says forbidden. How could he say permitted? Or how could he say forbidden? The Mishnah says permitted. And the Gemara will say, no, this Amora held like another opinion of one of the sages of the Mishnah from that time period, but was not recorded in the Mishnah. Not every teaching and not every ruling in the days of the Mishnah made it into the Mishnah. And sometimes the Gemara will quote what's called a brisa. A brisa in Aramaic, bara, means outside. An outside teaching. The Talmud is in Aramaic. Should have mentioned that. It's a basic point. A brisa is a teaching from the days of the Mishnah, from the same sages that appear in the Mishnah, but was not recorded in the Mishnah. And the Gemara will say, this Amora, this sage of the Gemara, holds like the opinion found in this brisa. And then the Gemara will quote that brisa, which was still known orally. So as long as there was some opinion from the days of the Mishnah that an Amora, a sage of the Gemara, can, so to speak, hang his hat on, that was allowed. we might not accept him, but it does not disprove his position. But it's clearly an axiom of the Gemara that if the Gemara can prove that in the days of the Mishnah, absolutely no one held like this, that all the sages of the Mishnah disagreed with some position of a sage of the Gemara, then he is disproven. Then the Gemara's phrase, tiyufta, disproven, that rejected, that opinion cannot stand. So if there was unanimous agreement in the period of the Mishnah about a halacha, then a later sage cannot disagree with that in the Gemara. That is an axiom of the Gemara. Now, the Gemara does not explain why that is so. It's clear that that is so. The Gemara doesn't really give an understanding of why that is so. So there are two main schools of thought, just to mention them briefly. One school of thought assumes and understands that at the close of the Mishnah, all of the greatest sages got together in one place or communicated in some other way. And whatever they could come to agreement, they did. And anything that at any point in Jewish history is agreed upon overwhelmingly by all or the majority of the sages of Israel, then that almost as if has the status of the ruling of the Sanhedrin Hagadol, the great Sanhedrin, the high court, which is to some degree a representative body. An individual can't go against the ruling of the Sanhedrin. So instead of a representative body of the sages, if all of the sages get together, that is the authority of the Sanhedrin, and that can no longer be disagreed upon, if there really is at least a unanimous decision. That's one school of thought. Another school of thought says, no, there was no formal agreement, but the sages of the Gemara themselves sort of recognized that, wow, if in the time of the Mishnah, there was not one person who agreed with me, it's probably not right. You know, it's one thing if there's disagreement and most people thought one way and then there's a change of understanding. But if there is unanimous agreement that this is not correct, then the sages of the Gemara themselves, assume then there must be something wrong that I'm not thinking about. But either way, it's accepted that that a sage of the Gemara cannot disagree with the unanimous agreement of the sages of the Mishnah. And similarly, that's more or less how we view the close of the Gemara, that you can't disagree with the Gemara. The Gemara includes many opinions, so there can be different opinions of which opinion of the Gemara to accept. But if there's something which goes against the unanimous opinion of all opinions of the Gemara, then also we assume that can't be disagreed with. And again, either because there was some formal acceptance at the close of the Gemara, or just that we must be mistaken if you can't find any opinion to hang your hat on, so to speak. I see a question in the chat box: was the Gemara written or oral? So I'm sure it was orally. I'm not sure at one point, this is more for the historians, and I'm sure the historians debate this, at what point did it become primarily studied from a text? But initially also, I'm sure it was studied orally, even when there was somewhat of a set text of the Gemara. Okay, we are ready to open a Gemara, an actual physical Gemara, or we have 15 minutes, or our virtual Gemaras. So let's go back to that link. I hope you have it. And now we'll do it. I'll make sure that everyone is following along. Go back to your Hebrew books link and go to page 4. That is the first page of the Gemara. Nod your head or give me a thumbs up, or you can tell me in the chat box if you have it. Excellent question, Donna. We will see.
Hi, we don't have it.
Could you send the link again?
What daf is it? I have a Gemara.
Beis Amud Aleph. The
Okay.
very first stuff. I'll put the link in again also.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, just put it again. Okay, so what do we have in front of us? We have a page of Gemara. let me just zoom out a little bit on mine. So in the middle, we have the Gemara, Mishnah and Gemara.
Can we
They're
use an actual Gemara instead of looking at it online?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. If you have an actual Gemara, I think you'll find it a little bit easier.
So how do we, what are we looking at?
The first page of the Gemara, that looks like this. The first page that will look like this.
First page, Saki?
Psachim. You need a tractate Psachim, which is, if you have a full set of Gemaras, it typically is the 4th volume.
Yeah, we don't have the 4th volume. We have the
I'm
first.
sorry, you'll have to use this. I'm sorry. If you have a printer right by you, you can print out this page. So right in front of you, you have a page of Gemara. In the middle, you have the Gemara, we'll call it. The right side is, the right column is Rashi, which is always on the, if you have a book in front of you with 2 pages, is always on the inside column. The main left column is Tosfot. And if we'll discuss all these commentaries, their styles in another class. And then we have a lot of other small marginal notes, which we will leave for now. Let's read the first line of the Mishnah. So you should see a big or, the word or.
I like it better. All right.
Everyone have that, the word or?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. Or larbasar, which you would think means the light of the 14th. We're talking about the 14th of Nisan. Bodkin es hachametz. We check for chametz. Laor haner, to the light of a candle. Now, we're not going to read the rest of the Mishnah. The rest of the Mishnah discusses where do you need to check exactly. If you go down in the middle column, the Gemara, 7 lines down, the beginning line, there's a big Gimel Mem. Does everyone have that?
Yep.
Gimel Mem, that stands for Gemara. So the Gemara, this is an example of the Gemara seeking to clarify the Mishnah. The Gemara begins, my or, what does the Mishnah mean? The light of the 14th. That sounds like during the day of the 14th. We don't check chametz during the day of the 14th. We check chametz at the night of the 14th. Rav Huna Amar. Rav Huna is a very prominent sage of the Gemara. Amar Nagi, Noga. That means light. It means light. What do you mean? Or means light. It means light. The light of the 14th, which sounds like the day of the 14th. The Rav Yehuda Amar Leili. No, or is a euphemism. It means night. We don't want to start off the Masechta, the darkness of the 14th. It's a euphemism to mean night. I don't want to get bogged down in this particular discussion, but this just to start a Gemara. And then the Gemara will then try to prove who's right. Does it mean daytime? Does it mean nighttime? In this case, the Gemara concludes that everyone agrees it means nighttime. And even Rav Huna, who said that, is just explaining the meaning of the word, but he agrees it's a euphemism and it means nighttime. Now, good. Any questions? I should really let you guys ask more questions. Any questions on this? Just this little piece. We read 1 line of a Mishnah, and 1 or 2 lines of a Gemara. Again, tonight please feel free to ask questions, but we're going to learn pieces of Gemara in much more in depth, slowly in the coming times. This is just a broad introduction. But any questions or comments?
The first 6 lines is actually Mishnah, and then it's followed by the Gemara.
Correct. Right. So you have Mishnah and then Gemara. Then after the Gemara discusses this Mishnah, the book of Talmud will present the next Mishnah, and then the Gemara's discussion on that Mishnah.
So we can't access it on the computer. So what would be some parallel thing that we could look at?
Is it the link not working, Donna? Or what's it?
Don't know how to change the page.
It's just on that initial page.
So if if you look, do you see above the page, do you say it says next or previous?
Oops.
Right above it there.
I tried doing that and it wouldn't move.
Do you see where it says next and previous?
Richard, how do I get back to it?
Above the Gemara. It's in like the heading.
This part? Oh, okay. Okay.
Little down arrow. Click on that little down. You'll get a list of numbers.
I see numbers.
Click on number 4.
Rabbi, can I ask a question meantime?
Yes, please ask. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So what always confuses me is the answers by the Amoraim, whatever.
Yeah,
They're very concise.
yeah.
In my opinion, they can be interpreted in different ways. The way you read the Gemara, is it because that's what your teacher taught you to read it this way? Or there might be some other people who say, no, that's not, he's not saying Lila. He's saying Lila in a different, with a different meaning.
Based on what I was taught, again, maybe sometimes that's true, but, and sometimes there are different opinions. You know, Rashi and Tosfos will argue how to read a word, but I don't think that's so common that there's really another way to read the literal meaning of the words. Sometimes that might be true, but if you, just based on how much on my learning, you know, that's, I don't know, I can't prove it to you. That's what the word seems to say. I mean, I'm sure Rashi translates that way
also. Just says one word.
Yeah, I don't know.
You translate it with a whole sentence.
You're right. It is, the Gemara is written in a way, it doesn't speak really in full sentences. That's the style. You have to be used to that and you have to know how to read it. You're not going to leave after these 4 sessions knowing how to read a Gemara. That just takes a lot more time. Unless that's the only thing we would do, but that wouldn't be interesting, I don't think, to most people. Donna, I hope you have this because this is going to answer your question.
Yeah, we don't.
Don't, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, we see what, every time we go to page 4 and click it, it just goes back to page 1.
Try next. Can you click next?
I don't see the word next.
Can you share your screen so we can see?
Yeah, okay. Let me, okay.
No, I'm in a classroom.
Oh, you share the screen.
Can someone else share their screen or?
Okay, we found it.
You found it. Okay, great. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so let's go back to page 15 now. Okay, I hope it works for you to guys do it at 15. This is the same page we were on before.
Oh, 15.
15. Go all the way on page 15, and then we're gonna be on the bottom line of Gemara on page 15. I have so much more to tell you guys in 6 minutes. We'll see how much we got through.
It's 15 in the computer.
15 in the bar in the website's pages.
Is it Zion on my bet?
Yes.
Unmuted.
Okay, we'll have to figure out a better way to do this for next time. So everyone, we'll give everyone practice maneuvering this.
Oh, I got a real book, so I.
Yeah,
Zion Amud Bet, page 15 in the Hebrew books. Does everyone have that?
We're on the page.
The bottom line, the very bottom line of the Gemara.
Where are the numbers? I mean, I see where the computer file has numbers, but on this page, I see the number 14.
Correct.
But I don't see.
Yes.
That's fine. You're on the right page, so don't worry. Let's leave that for now. But
Okay.
so the very line of the bottom line of the Gemara, you can see here the middle column kind of widens out based on the printing. The bottom line is, I don't want to try to read those bottom words. Also, that way I'll know someone has it.
Tanu Rabban.
Tanu Rabbanan. Okay.
Rabbanan. Okay.
So let me teach you some tricks.
Right here.
I'm trying to control myself, but in Aramaic,
Tanu.
Hebrew words that have a shin in them, the shin becomes a tough in Aramaic. Tanu is Aramaic, and it's like Hebrew shanu, lishanot, which means teach. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. They did not have quotations back then. Tanu Rabbanan is an introduction of a quotation and an introduction of a brisa. This is to answer your question, Donna. There are different key phrases, which means it is introducing a brisa. Tanu Rabbanan means we are introducing a brisa. So that means a teaching of the Mishnah sages, not found in the Mishnah. Tanu Rabbanan. And we'll see this is an elaboration on the opening Mishnah. Ein bodkin, lo la'or hachama, v'lo la'or halavana. You cannot check by sunlight or by the light of the moon, v'lo la'or ha'avuka, and not by the light of a torch, a big light. Ela la'or haner. You should use a small light that you can maneuver and handle. This brisa continues on to the next page, but I don't want to waste people's time of trying to turn that page. So it happens to be, though, I'm giving you an example of a brisa. A brisa is another Tanaic teaching, a teaching from the days of the Mishnah that is not found in the Mishnah. So this is a teaching about what you may use. It's elaborating on the Mishnah. It happens to be this Mishnah, we do have its original source. There was one collection of braitot, again, teachings from the sages of the Mishnah that were not included in the Mishnah, that was edited and collected soon after the writing of the Mishnah, called the Tosefta. Like Tosefet means addition. So the Tosefta, we have the Tosefta for each Masechta, and it is printed in the back of. It's normally, traditionally, it's the very last thing printed in a volume of Gemara. So we're going to do this, but if it takes too long, we won't spend too much time on it. Go to page 448 in the Hebrew books pages. 448.
448?
448.
How do you do that?
Don, if it doesn't work for you, don't worry. This is not such an important point. But whoever did that, hopefully some people do it. You can see it says Tosefta. Everyone see that? Anyone?
Go there?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So this is the
Got it.
Tosefta of Psachim, the collection of braitot, not all the braitot, but a collection of teachings of Mishnah sages that don't appear in the Mishnah. Look at the very first one. It follows the order of the Mishnah. Or La Basar. At the night of the 14th, Bokin is a chametz lo arner, you check with a candlelight. Ein bodkin lo lor chama, you cannot use the sunlight. Lo or lavana, not moonlight. Ella lo arner, you can only use a candle. It's not actually exactly the brisa as it appears in the Gemara, but it perhaps is the source, or again, or very similar teaching. So I'm just using this as an example of to illustrate that there were other teachings from the time of the Mishnah. Some were even codified in this sort of addendum to the Mishnah called the Tosefta. There are others that we no longer have the collection or any source for it. We just have it as it is quoted in the Gemara when they still had the traditions for these oral teachings. And the Gemara will introduce these teachings, whether it's to prove the position of a sage of the Gemara or to disprove, or just to add to the discussion, to be another source of material. Okay. Now for something really interesting. We'll end with this. I know I'm almost out of time, but this is gonna be amazing. Let me give you just a few minutes of history of the page of the Gemara. Okay. Let me put in another link in the chat box.
Can you shrink that?
Got rid of it.
Oh, it's right here. I just open a new tab. I'm gonna put his link in the new tab.
Okay, I just gave you guys another link. Try to do that one. I'm sorry if you have to paste it into your browser.
Don't see it.
Sorry, we don't have it. Is it in the Gemara?
No.
I don't think it showed up.
I'll do it again.
So what is it?
It didn't come
Are
through.
you sure you're in the right
Didn't come
chat
through.
space?
Let me try it. Let me put it in the chat box again. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I just didn't hit enter. Okay, there. Now you should see it.
Yep. Hold on. Gotta copy it.
Masechet Psachim Pesach Rishon.
Yeah, you got it. Okay, you got it. Let me get it myself. Let me just
Masechet Pesachim Pesach Rishon. Got it.
Okay. What you are looking at is a PDF.
Yeah.
Of the first ever full printing of the Talmud from the year 1520. They have this on HebrewBooks.org. Okay, Venetia is Venice. See the big bold word.
Yeah.
If you go to page, I think it's just skip ahead a few pages to page 4 in this Hebrew Books link. This is the first page of Masechet Psachim, printed in 1520.
Wow.
And you can see it has the Gemara, it has Rashi Tosus. It doesn't have all the other side things that are now in our Gemara. the small marginal notes, but the basic page is the exact same from the printing in 1520. The page numbers are the same. There's 115 or 20, 121, 122 pages in Psachim, Dapim. That's based on the same pagination from the printing of Venice by Daniel Bomberg. He not Jewish, sounds a little bit like a Jewish name. He wasn't Jewish. He employed Jews, but he was not Jewish. And that basic page layout stayed till today. We use the same basic page layout. The Gemara that we were looking at when we were looking at the Psachim, that's called the Vilna Shas, the Vilna edition, which was printed in the 1880s. Again, that all those marginal notes and other things in the back of the Gemara that were not present, that are now printed in the back of the volume of the Gemara, that was from 1880. And basically every Gemara is now follows that Vilna Shas layout, which is based on the Venice layout. Since the year 2000, we have been tweaking it. Not the page of the Gemara, or not the basic part of the page of the Gemara, but some of the marginal notes have been tweaked. And since the year 2000 in some printings, and some of the things up here in the back of the Gemara. But the basic Gemara, Rashi, Tosas layout, we still used basically the exact Vilna Shas printing from 1880, which follows very much the layout from the Venice printing in 1520.
But what happened in 2000?
In 2000, some of them, so for example, I can't show this to you, but if you look at some of the marginal notes on the side were rearranged, or additional marginal notes were added on the very outside of Rashi and Tosfot. And unfortunately, we're out of time, but some of the sections of commentaries in the back of a volume of Talmud were retypeset, and pages were changed, all for the better, but it's still a change, which is a big deal.
But there's no authoritative publishing company that we're the Gemara masters and we get to decide this.
Correct. So you'll ask, well, why has the page of Gemara not changed at all? So there are two reasons. There is certainly some people have a certain feeling of sanctity to it. Like they would not want to do it. For practical reasons, every sefer that has been published in the last however many hundreds of years, when they reference a passage in the Gemara, they'll reference it by the page that it is on. Psachim Daled Amud Bet, Psachim 4b. So you're not going to want to print a Gemara. People have done it, so I shouldn't say that. But the reason why most people do not, the downside of changing the pages is that then no one can really use your Gemara, because if you're learning some other source, some other book, and they quote a source and you want to look it up, you need to go back to the traditional printing, Psachim 4b. And you can't find it in your new version, or at least it's much more difficult to find it in your new version. So that's the practical reason why the basic pages haven't changed, even if the layout of the page has changed a little bit, but the basic page number has not changed. Let me just end with one last more sort of basic introductory point, and then we'll conclude. If people want to stay and ask questions, discuss, that's great, but I don't want to keep anyone. We've been talking about the Talmud Bavli. There actually are two sets of the Talmud. There's the Talmud Bavli and the Talmud Yerushalmi. The Talmud Bavli are the discussions in the Babylonian academies that were again edited and put together around the year 500, 550. There was a similar effort made in Israel, did not happen in Yerushalayim, and happened in the north in Tiberia, but it's called the Talmud Yerushalmi, of the similar discussions that were happening in the yeshivos in Israel. It was done earlier, though. It was edited around the year 350, 400. So it's a smaller time period of discussions. And there certainly is overlap between the two, but they are separate books. The Talmud Yerushalmi, the Talmud Bavli, it's sort of chicken or the egg. I'm not sure which came first. The Talmud Bavli was seen as authoritative, and the Talmud Bavli was studied much more than the Talmud Yerushalmi. The Talmud Yerushalmi for us is in a dialect of Aramaic, which is much more difficult. The text was not edited nearly as well, or it has become much more corrupt. It's very difficult to make it through the Talmud Yerushalmi. Arkadi and the Talmud Yerushalmi, it is true. Sometimes it is so hard to understand what the words are saying, and there'll be diametrically opposed readings of just what the words are saying. Did it say yes or no? It's not clear. Since the Talmud Bavli was considered more authoritative, perhaps because it was just done better and it included more, another 150 years more of conversation, so it sort of subsumed the Talmud Yerushalmi in some ways. So the Talmud Yerushalmi was studied less, therefore there are fewer commentaries on Talmud Yerushalmi, therefore was used not as much. When there wasn't printing, there are much fewer copies of it, more mistakes crept into it. So it's much more difficult to study, and in some ways less relevant to our practice of halakha and understanding. But certainly it is relevant, but not as relevant. One final point, the Talmud Bavli, there are only Gemaras. There's only Gemara discussion, more or less, on 4 of the 6 orders of the Mishnah. Moed, holidays, Nashim, family law, Nazik, monetary law, and Kadshim, the laws of the Beis HaMikdash. Zrayim, agricultural, that entire 6th of the Mishnah, the agricultural laws, and Taharos, ritual purity and impurity, there is no Gemara. There is no Gemara. Whether they didn't study it as much in the academies of Babylonia, or it was a work was never written and edited, we don't have it. The Talmud Yerushalmi, the Talmud of Israel, there is a Talmud Yerushalmi on the first Seder of Zrayim, of the agricultural laws, which makes sense. In Israel, the agricultural laws are much more relevant. They were studied more. In Babylonia, the agricultural laws did not apply, so they weren't studied as much, and they wouldn't exert themselves to produce a Gemara on the Talmud, on the order of Zrayim. But it is strange that the Talmud Bavli, there is Gemara on the order of Kadshim, sacrificial law, but there is no Talmud Yerushalmi, Jerusalem or Israeli Talmud, on sacrificial law, which is strange. If anything, it's more connected to the land of Israel. If there's a Talmud, there's a Bavli on Kadshim, you would expect there to be Yerushalmi Kadshim, but there isn't. But I'll end with this last final interesting fact. There are some sources, though, that seem to reference that there was a Yerushalmi on Kadshim, on sacrificial law, and that it was lost, which is certainly possible. And in the early 20th century, the very beginning, the first decade, a rabbi made this big announcement. I have discovered in some library a manuscript of the Talmud Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem, the Israeli Talmud, on the order of Kadshim, on sacrificial law. And it was an entire Talmud on an entire order. That's a lot of books. Pretty soon, it was determined that the entire thing was a forgery. He made up an entire Talmud. And what at first could pass as not just a Talmud, but a Talmud Yerushalmi, which it just is much harder to write and to mimic and to create. And this was discovered both by traditional Talmidei Chachamim, not just, academics. And one story that I've heard, one of the great, the Gedolim, the greatest of the Talmudic sages in the beginning of the 20th century, was a man named Rav Yosef Rosen, who was known as the Rogatchover Gaon. That's his name. He was a super genius. And he was one of the first people who said this is a forgery. Maybe people kind of had some suspicions. And his proof was the following. He said that in every tractate, there is at least the name of one Amora, one Gemara sage, that appears nowhere else. There's certain sages in the Gemara that are very prominent. They appear all over. But there are also minor sages that are much more less common. And in every tractate, there's at least one sage that appears nowhere else. And in this person's Talmud Yerushalmi, I don't know, in the whole order or many Masechtas, There was no new name. And that was, in his mind, sufficient proof. Now, the reason behind that is because that was the whole point. He was just using the names of that already existed and was making it up. But that was how the rugged shover, how, you know, his proof, that he knew this whole thing is a forgery. So there is also this whole other world of Talmud Yerushalmi, but again, it's not really studied so much nowadays. And we will be focusing on the Talmud Bavli. There's so much more to say, but we will have to stop here. I'm sorry for going over a little bit. And again, please sign off if you need to go. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Can you tell me when the word Gemara is used and when the word Talmud is used, and is there a difference?
I think officially Talmud includes the Mishnah and Gemara. Originally, when those words were first used, I'm not sure. The Gemara, the word Talmud does appear in the Gemara. But when the Gemara itself is referencing Talmud, it means something different because it's like before we had the Talmud. But I think Talmud includes Mishnah and Gemara, and the Gemara means just the Gemara part. But colloquially, I think they're used interchangeably.
What does the word Gemara mean?
Gemara. Okay, thank you. Gemara is Aramaic and means similar to learning. It's like the shosh of lomeid, learning.
Could be teachings.
Teachings, yeah, teachings, learnings. It's like the shosh lamad can mean teach and learn also.
So it's the same thing as Talmud, because Talmud also must come from
exactly. Yeah, it's the same. It is a very similar meaning. Yeah.
Not related to Gamar.
No, not to finish. No, in meaning finish. No, I don't think so. No. In the Gemara will say like Gamrinan. We learn from this Mishnah. We learn from this pasuk X Y Z. In Aramaic, Gimel Mem Resh Aleph means to learn or to derive.
I'm interested in. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes, Louise. Yeah.
Well, I'm interested in what you started to say about a new edition of the Talmud that somehow became authoritative in 2000.
No. It didn't. No. It didn't become a. No, I didn't mean Steinsaltz. No.
Okay.
Not one. No. There's actually now many editions, meaning many different printers have played with, again, the marginal notes or things in the back in different ways. I meant since around 2000, people started playing with things. It wasn't just purely just a reproduction of the 1880 Vilna Shas.
Oh, you mean like typesetting it instead of photos offset?
Exactly.
So up until then, all the Gemaras were basically photo offset of the Vilna Shas?
I think so, yeah. That's, maybe I'm off by, a decade. But,
no, but I know what you're talking about. So no one ever tried to typeset it since Vilna?
Since around 2000, you're saying?
No, I mean, since, the 1800s, there was...
The basic Gemara, you're saying?
First time anybody tried typesetting it fresh?
Was when, you're saying?
So you're saying that since the 1800s, no one ever tried again to retypeset. They just...
I can't say no one. Listen, maybe there was some, kind of strange printing, but like overwhelmingly, Biblical Gemara you would pick up in a
photo offset. It's a photo offset of the Vilna.
Yeah, correct.
The years 200 from the Yehuda Nasi, you said it was 200 and 500. These are all years relevant to our current years.
Correct.
Nothing to do with the Jewish years.
Nothing, no. Yeah, these are, secular years when I'm using years like that, 200, 500, 550.
Okay. In the past, I've noticed there's a lot of abbreviations in the Talmud. Is there a cheat sheet somewhere?
There are, yeah. I'll have to point you to one to get you one, but yeah, there are.
Thank you.
Where does the oral law come from? Like, who started the oral law?
So there are different parts to the oral law, but it's all rooted in Har Sinai in some way. There were some interpretations or understandings of the pasuk, which we understand go straight back to Har Sinai, meaning certain words. The classic examples are totafot. The Torah says, put totafot between your eyes. Well, what is a totafot? Moshe had to explain what that word meant in some way. So there's certain things that are basic, like meanings of words. But there also, we understand, going back to Har Sinai, Moshe taught certain, specific tools of how to interpret psukim, and a certain kind of approach, understanding of how to read it. There's a certain culture of how to read any text, and so new understandings were derived. New questions would come, new applications. Now, this is all understandings and applications of Torah law. There's a whole nother area that the Sanhedrin, the sages, have authority under whatever the guidelines are to create new law, whether it's new positive mitzvot, whether reading the Megillah, lighting Hanukkah candles, or prohibitions like muksa, other such prohibitions. So when we say the oral law, right, it's a really big category that includes all of these things, they're not part of the written law of the Torah. So something can be not part of the written law of the Torah because it's a tradition of how to understand the Torah, or it is sort of new ideas reading between the lines of the Torah, or it's a case that the Torah doesn't explicitly deal with. So, what makes most sense of how to apply it. And then there are things that are not in the Torah because the rabbis totally invented, that they state is rabbinic law. It's d'Rabbanan. It's not rooted in the Torah. So some things go really all the way back, and some things are a development, whether it's new enactments, obviously are a development, and even new understandings develop over time.
Is all oral law b'Rabbanan?
No. When it means some oral law is, again, just let's say, what is an esrog? So, there's, the Torah, how the Torah describes it, just from the verses themselves, you can't know it's an esrog. But Moshe showed them this. You need to take this fruit. So that's certainly from the Torah. It's considered Torah law. But even things that are more attenuated a little bit and are considered derivations, we do consider Torah law. This is a really big topic. Some would say it's sort of a lower level of Torah law, but it still is the interpretations and applications of the Torah. That which is not explicit in the Torah, but it's interpretations, applications of the Torah, as opposed to just rabbinic law.
So, for example, at which point was esrog codified as the fruit?
As far as we know, there's no recorded other opinion. We have no recording of any other opinion. So we assume it goes. The traditional understanding is that the esrog goes back to Moshe Rabbeinu.
Okay.
That's one example. Not everything is like that.
Okay.
All right, maybe we'll stop here. Thank you for hanging in there, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. And next time we'll be more in Gemaras, and I hope everyone will make it back. Thank you, everyone.
All right, you want us to bring a text next time?
Let me figure it out. I might once I haven't completely decided exactly which passages we'll do, so maybe I'll also just make PDFs and email it to everyone.
Actually, Rabbi, for us it worked excellent.
This worked. This did work.
Okay, great. I'm glad to. I'm glad. Thank you, everyone.
It might be easier to flip around electronically than flipping through a book.
Yeah, great. Yeah. If I don't speak to everyone, good Shabbos.